video?
Working on it.
Give him a second.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you.
Francois, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm calling the meeting to order because we got a huge agenda.
Alice, I'll be in tomorrow, so just leave everything here when you leave.
Okay,
Okay.
alright,
Thank
good
you.
luck with the
Thank
sick crowd,
you.
okay. So, I wanna call the meeting to order, I need to announce, planning board meetings are broadcast live and digitally recorded. This meeting is being held both in person and virtually through Zoom pursuant to Governor Baker's extending the COVID-19 rules to allow public meetings to be conducted remotely so that board and committee members as well as members of the public can participate remotely. So I wanna call the meeting to order, announce we have a quorum, introduce our members. This is Christopher Monroe, I'm Alice Livedall. Virtually, we have Francois Steiger, who should come up. Is he able to be pictured?
He would need to turn his camera on to be pictured.
Okay. Francois, if you can turn your camera on, do that, cause you're supposed to be, but if it compromises your ability to get the signal, then don't. Okay, myself, I'm Alice Livedall, we have members missing, who may join us. John Demalia is not here yet, as far as you, he
Not
usually
yet,
joins remotely.
Nobody else listed yet.
Okay, and so the missing members are Bill Homans and, John Demalia. We also have an alternate who's not here tonight, and Mallory is our assistant who just left. So, so there is a quorum because there are three of us, of the five. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. We usually begin with public comments, but the thing with public comments are that we, if you're here related to a specific article, which I know most of you are, Streeter Road, is if you wanna hold off your comments until you hear the presentation and then we'll open it to the public after that. That's what we prefer to do, cause we think, that does work better, you'll have a presentation to respond to. Okay, so our next order of business is just some approval of minutes, and Christopher, I had some changes on this, and Francois, which most of them are typos, I hate to not do this though, because we are so far behind in minutes. So very quickly, the third paragraph, which addresses Mr. Voss was here, these are minutes from April 14th. I wanna change that first sentence to Monroe, meaning Christopher noted some of the edits should be plural. There's a misspelling of agro-tourism, two paragraphs down from that. The last sentence on this page is, promote non-motorized recreation and trail access to the, I think you mean Ware River watershed is what you were saying, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that needs to be where instead of water, or where needs to go in that, where, yeah, okay. There's a few typos on page 2, plan, on the third paragraph. The last sentence should be, Mr. Voss indicated that the next step would be opening up the final draft for the last round of public comments. It was just a misspelling. And, one other correction is the top of page 3, the last sentence should read, Mr. Murray stated, a majority of land is not usable for development, which wasn't clear, and the sentence before that is, there is an option to build, you're gonna hear about this tonight, to build a 14-unit development and an option for development under Mass General Laws 40B, and that should say with a comprehensive permit. So, those corrections, taking those corrections, can you have a motion to approve minutes?
This is Francois Steiger. I'm making the motion that we approve the minutes of April 14th, 2022.
Christopher Monroe, second.
Okay, further comments, suggestions, hearing none, lived all aye.
Monroe, aye.
Okay, so that's done. Thanks for being patient, folks. So that's for Mallory. Next thing is Bill is not here yet. Well, that's all right. The next thing is we're gonna switch two things out. No, the actual next thing is the report on the status of the implementation chapter to the master plan for people listening out there, we have been through the last, 3 years, 4 years?
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
3.5
Doing
years.
the new master plan, which is a requirement of all cities and towns in the Commonwealth, that goes through everything in the town, services, zoning, mapping, everything. And it's been just a real effort, and and really very revealing, very constructive conversations. The public gets a chance to come, we're gonna present it. But the very last, each of these chapters has recommendations at the end. And the last chapter in the whole plan is called the implementation chapter, which collates those suggestions.
Yep, it's
And, okay,
giant
so.
matrix of all the goals and actions.
So Jonathan Voss, who works with MRPC, which is the Montechusett Regional Planning Committee, which has headed up this effort with the planning board, is here tonight, and he's gonna tell us about the implementation plan and the next steps. So,
Well, I'm not gonna take too long, you guys have seen all of this stuff before, so get out of here pretty quickly. It's just a breakdown of the chapters, the goals and the actions of each chapter. I haven't completed the draft yet with the related elements, the implementation leadership and the implementation partner, but that will also be affected by the feedback that we get from the boards and committees when it goes out for the municipal government to comment on, which can change some of the who takes leadership in certain roles and who assists them, and the people that are going to be working on it have the best knowledge of that. And at that point, we also adjust for timeframes and priorities according to the different departments that are working on it. And then after that, we put in the projected, or at least the rough cost estimates, MRPC, and that kind of wraps up the entire matrix. But as it goes down each of the chapters, goals, and then the individual actions for each of the goals. Some are taken out of the recommendations and broken down more explicitly, and some are just a straight copy of the goals and actions from the chapters as they're presented, like with the open space and recommendation plan. And it goes from the economic development element to the historic and cultural element. I had to leave out the housing element temporarily just because there's some corruption on our servers. That'll be addressed when Jason, our IT director, is back from vacation and I can get in contact with him on Monday. So I'll update it at that point.
okay, send it to
Yeah, and
Mallory and she'll get it out to us.
Yep, and then we go into the land use section, and after that it's open space and recreation, which goes on for a while. There are quite a few actions on that section. And then we come to services and facilities, and then the circulation and transportation section, which is the last one. In total, it's about 120 some actions altogether. And because it was started about 3.5 years ago, some of these might already have been started to be being addressed, or they might even be completed depending on if they were high priority short time frame actions, such as, well, one example would be forming a master plan implementation committee, which is something that can happen in a single meeting or two. And this will be presented to the planning board to distribute to all of the boards and committees in town for a period of several weeks for feedback on their view of what the implementation leadership and partnership roles will be within the town itself. And at that point, we've wrapped up all of the technical work for the master plan, and if the planning board chooses, you can bring it, the entire master plan before a period of public feedback and comment, and then bring it back to MRPC for some brief edits and revision, and then you can accept it, or you can accept it after the implementation chapter is completed and just leave it at that.
I think we would want hearings. So, for the public in general, every chapter that was completed, we had to have a hearing on, but this was written during COVID.
Yeah, so a lot of them were
the input from the
virtual.
public was really limited, so I think we probably wanna do that.
Okay, yeah, it's easily done. I mean, the town would handle most of that itself, setting it up, and then MRPC can come out to discuss it and go over in depth and what was done, how it was structured, what our process was. And then, because you mentioned earlier, some of the reserve funds that were held, you can come back to us and use those to pay for any last revisions and edits.
Oh.
And then
It would be actually be nice to be able to tell the public, if you want a revision, we can still do
yeah,
that.
it
Okay.
won't be completely comprehensive redoing the
No, I
whole
know,
thing.
no, but small things.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
through small things, maybe update some things that have been noted by the public if that's apparent, and then you can then accept it at that point as well. But it only needs to be accepted by the planning board, and then it's done.
Okay,
So it's finished at that point.
okay, so, but we have to wait till we get things back, and then you
Yeah.
tally the costs, the
But-
timeframes.
Yeah, but we should be wrapped up by the end of June. I think.
Okay, so we
yeah.
need to get this out, and we need to make it
I'll
time sensitive to the boards.
I'll have this out to you, the complete implementation draft out to you by Tuesday next week, so before June 1st. And
So-
then you'll have pretty much almost the entirety of June to have it circulating throughout the town.
The challenge with that is a lot of these committees
Mm-hmm.
won't go through a meeting cycle. And if they do go through it, it'll be at the very end of next month. So like EDC tries to meet the third Wednesday,
Okay.
and open space meets the last
They just met
Wednesday.
last night, so they meet
Or
once
the-
once a month.
Yeah, they end up being on either the last or the first Wednesday,
Okay.
depending upon how the month goes. So they would need to consider maybe scheduling another meeting to go through it if that was the case.
Okay. If I might also be able to talk to the director on our end and see if there's anything we can do because the timelines are so close.
Yeah, tell them we'd love 30 days of wiggle room.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Make it
it's
August instead, and we could do so much better.
it's
August
tough,
1st.
especially with some of the one day a month committees, because they don't have paid staff like we
Yeah.
do. So that's a challenge for them to start with.
But we'll try to
And-
get this out anyway, so
Yeah.
you can do that. Now, when you say your final draft, are you gonna fill in cost estimates, timeframes?
I'll
Or is
have
that
I'll have
after?
filled out the related elements, implementation, leadership partners, the cost estimates, and then the time frame and the priority are up to the town itself for the estimates. And then I'll also make corrections according to the leadership and the partnership of the various committees and boards that will be involved for the final copy after we get all the feedback. 'Cause
So we should-
there'll be some jockeying.
So in our directions to our town committees, we should say, please, with respect to your section, come up with timeframes and priorities for those items.
Yes,
Okay.
for any projects that you're involved in, especially as the implementation leadership,
Yeah.
time frame and priority are the most important ones.
Super, okay, super. Okay, well, we thank you very much.
Alice, can I ask one follow-up question?
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Looking at a lot of this stuff, some of the implementation leadership fell into different places than I would have expected, like the trail connection section. I am surprised and pleasantly surprised to see that falls under the planning board, but I was wondering why it didn't fall under open space. And then the follow-up is there a matrix or something that you can produce for us and for the town committees about resources that are available to help do some of the stuff? Because I looked on the website for MRPC and that section appeared to be years out of date. So
I can do that, yeah.
Okay, yeah, cause like the rural grant was something I was particularly interested in for business development,
Mhm.
and that section was very out of date.
Okay, I'll make note of. Well, I have to talk to our IT director anyway, so I will be bringing multiple things. But yeah, no, that's definitely something we can make sure to update on our end.
Excellent.
All right.
Okay. Stay in touch and try to get us, an extension.
You
to
will be
August.
hearing from me on multiple things on Tuesday.
Thank you
Alright.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, the next thing on our agenda is a completeness determination for a special permit for a cell tower sponsored by Vertex. It says solar. Cell tower. So this was a special permit that was, filed with us, and we go through this process of reviewing it for completion, because we must, when we find it complete, it starts the calendar going for all the timeframes and the public hearings. So I do know we have two people here that are interested in this issue. One is, Mr. Murray, who, for everyone, he's gonna be speaking to you all later too. He's, from Places Associates, which are the consultants to the planning board. and so he's the one that actually reviewed this special permit application that was submitted and has responded with the things that need to be resolved. So, and Mr. Perusi's here? Can you- he represents the cell tower company.
Who do we have there? That's parties.
She said he was here.
That's it, right?
Yes.
And anybody else?
Ask Mr. Perusi, cause he would know, probably not. I don't know.
Alright. Do you have anybody else who's appearing with you that we need to promote?
Mr. Parisi, you're muted. Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, we
now.
can.
Thank you. Perfect.
Is it possible to put your face on the screen? There we go. We're supposed to, with people, remote participants, put their faces on the screen. Okay, so we do have, Bill Murray here. I think, you've gotten a copy of his review of your application and of the things that need to be fixed, which seemed lengthy, but not undoable. I think one of the things that seemed to me that really struck out is, to me, is maybe this isn't true in other towns, but every time we do a special permit, almost always it triggers an environmental review and a site plan. And if you could have your people draft those in a way that sort of follows the format of the bylaw, it really helps us lay people make sure that we've hit all those questions. So that's just a comment from me, but I do have Mr. Murray here, if you have any particular questions you want to address.
I would, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Murray, for a very thorough review. I would say, Madam Chair, characterizing correctly in the sense that most of them were ministerial or logistical. It just kind of take a little bit of time to pull it all together. There was one issue, an environmental assessment. We can certainly do that. I thought we kind of handled it in the project narrative, but we can lay it out in the format of the
Bylaw, thank you.
The one question that Mr. Murray asked for were drainage calculations. And quite frankly, we don't generally do those because we built a gravel access driveway to a gravel facility. There's generally about 20 by 20 of new impervious surface on a very large lot that's required by your bylaw to meet all the applicable setbacks that are mandated. And our engineers just generally don't do that because we're not creating any more impervious surface. And I think they've incorporated substantial stormwater runoff and erosion control measures in the design. But when I ask them for drainage calcs, they say, oh no, that's gonna take us a long time, a lot of money, and and it's gonna come and say 0 or some de minimis number because there is no increase in impervious surface. And we were wondering whether the planning board might be inclined to waive that requirement.
Bill, you want to address that issue for us? You can come up if you want. I'm sorry about the situation with the computers, but you know, you're probably staring into a philodendron
Yeah,
there.
I see that.
Yeah, okay.
It's got wires through it too.
Oh, great,
There we go.
okay.
So the site plan regulations require drainage calculations. You're taking what is a field and you're turning it into a hard packed gravel and shoulders. You're tributary to a wetland at the mid slope and bottom of the hill. And you're gonna be pitching water potentially to the existing road. So you can certainly ask the planning board for a waiver, but we would say that that would not be an advisable waiver to grant.
You know, you say hard packed gravel. This is really, we built the driveway to facilitate construction. Afterwards, you know, it's really an unmanned facility. Somebody comes by in a truck once a month. We don't plow in the wintertime. We don't, you know, it gets less traffic than a residential driveway. And, I guess you could call it hard packed gravel, but it's really impervious surface or non-impervious surface. There's a very impervious surface because it's just
then ask for a waiver. We would recommend against it because it will be a hard packed gravel driveway. It will create more runoff. We don't know what the impacts on Brigham Road will be, how much more water is going down Brigham. Brigham already has problems. Steep slopes, gutter flows, it can't handle flow. Which means even if you're not gonna discharge to Brigham Road, that means you need to discharge somewhere else and you're impacting something else. And under state law, you can't discharge anywhere else that might cause downstream damage or damage in a butter. Well, the property that you're in is massive, it's 90 some odd acres. I would think that a cursory examination of the stormwater is warranted. Because if you're not gonna pave it, if you're not going, a gravel driveway generates like 80 to 90% the runoff of a paved driveway. So the difference is pretty minuscule in terms of runoff, and we're worried about impacting Brigham Road. How are you dealing with that? And we're worried about downstream impacts, and that's all your guy has to deal with. I find it very strange that you don't do drainage calculations, because that's a potential significant impact.
In this particular case, we're using the existing driveway off of Brigham Road and took substantial measures and had to pay a lot of money to avoid doing any work on Brigham Road by securing an easement over an abutting property, because that's where the actual road is. So we're not doing any work anywhere near Brigham Road. We're just using the existing driveway.
And then where's the water that's uphill flowing downhill going?
It dissipates on the 90-acre property that you referred to.
Prove it.
Well, we would respectfully ask that the planning board waive that requirement if they were so inclined. If we could get a kind of indication whether the planning board were so inclined to do that, and then we could respond.
Mr. Parisi, we generally don't disagree with our experts, generally. I did notice in your plans, you already have very significant driveway sketches, right, with the grades and everything? Would it be that difficult to do, we're only talking about runoff from this drive, right?
Right.
It seems to me if you've already got sketches of the drive, I mean, detailed drawings of the drive and the grades, I mean, I don't know what's involved, but
My office could do it in less than 2 days.
I just, you know, it all comes back on the planning board when we waive things and then you have torrential rains and something washes out. So, if he thinks it's advisable, I mean, I can consult my other members. Chris?
I would tend to go with our expert on it.
Francois? He's muted. There he is.
I have the same feeling.
We don't mean to be uncooperative, but it's just something that we make everybody else do, so it's not like a hardship we're imposing on you. Anybody that comes with a plan, the storage locker people had to do it, the marijuana people, they put in their driveway to the fields of marijuana, they had to do it. I think it heads off issues. So, I mean, I could take a formal vote if you like, but you get the feeling of the board, and we only have 3 members here, sadly.
You don't have a formal application in front of you, you shouldn't formally
I
vote.
appreciate you.
Okay, alright. Are there, I do wanna also,
I'm just gonna check and make sure John didn't show up.
wait a minute, we're looking to see if we have a 4th member that may be here.
No.
No, okay. So there's just one other thing I'll point out, Mr. Parisi's here, is you all sitting there, these are actually people from the other side of town, Mr. Parisi, but everybody in town should have gotten a flyer in the mail, that talked about this cell tower. And it talks about the balloon test, and what it explains is that they put up a balloon from where this is tower, the base of the tower, they run it up 150 feet, and this has to be done when there's, you know, not a windstorm going on and so on, so it's a missing target, it's a moving target, but it is presently scheduled for June 7th, which is also town meeting day, so maybe that's early to remember, between 8 and 2. So if you look up in the sky, where this property is located is across from the library, but way up the hill, 1,000 feet or more away from Main Street in Brigham. And, you know, this is one of the requirements of our bylaw, and this is what he's doing. So, I also would point out, there was an error in this that says this is before the Hillsborough Planning Board, but it's before the Hubbardston Planning Board. So, make sure that.
Madam Chair, I have to apologize for that. That was my typo. I do apologize. I sent it actually to Mallory, I sent it to the folks at the client, I sent it to the post office, and no one noticed it, but it's again my error. I looked at it very carefully, and I don't think it's material. I think we used the word payroll, Hubbardston many times. It says at the top, town of Hubbardston. We talked about the Hubbardston zoning board. We talked about the address, 14 Main Street, Hubbardston. I said if you need any more information, contact the town of Hubbardston, and I'm sure Mallory will have information on the website. We talked about that, and so I regret the typo, but I don't think it's material enough to have to be advertised.
We suggested he resend it, and he's declining to do that because he thinks it's not a major issue. So, the planning board doesn't opine, you know, on whether, I mean, could it be challenged? I don't know. But it's your notice and your judgment call, in my opinion. So, but I can at least tell the folks here, right, that it's an error, and pass that along and tell everybody else to look for that balloon on the 7th. Okay.
Absolutely. The message is the balloon's gonna be up.
And if-
Again, I regret the typo, but I think they're gonna get the message that the balloon's gonna be up.
And if it's not up on the 7th, go to the website, it's cause it's too windy, and it'll give you the next day.
Exactly. Usually we can kind of predict the weather most accurately the day before. So on Monday morning, we'll confirm the weather. We look at multiple sources. And if it looks good, we'll post it on the website. And if it looks like we're gonna have to postpone it, we'll post it on the website so that people can look on Monday afternoon and then on Tuesday morning as to whether or not it's up.
Okay, and last question for you, because we have a really full agenda here, is our next regularly scheduled meeting is the 16th of June. Do you think you'll have all of these all the revisions made by then?
My goal is to get in by the end of next week or right after.
Okay, and you can send it to Mr. Murray first, right? Cause I wanna, we wanna make sure it's complete as well, so we can move along, where you can fix anything, our goal is not to hold things up, that can be resolved before we get there. Alright, so, okay, so anything further? Cause I wanna progress to our next agenda item.
Can we ask a
I'm
question?
all set. Thank you
Yeah,
very
we
much.
have one question from the public, go ahead.
The time frame is 8 to 2 that this balloon is going up?
Yes, 8 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon,
Only on one day.
only on one day.
So the only thing with that is, I feel like during the week most people will be at work. Like I typically work like 7 to 3, so I would.
There are problems, the bylaw actually has a whole 24 hours,
Yeah.
but you can't actually keep a balloon up that long.
So can one be like during the week and maybe like a balloon during like the weekend? So if someone works during the week, it's available on the weekend for someone to see.
I'll let both of you weigh in on that. Bill first?
Maybe you can take that up during the public hearing and do another test if it's warranted, if enough people show up and say that they didn't see it.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, maybe. Mr. Peruzzi, how much are these, do these tests involve to set up?
We engage consultants to do it so that they certify that the balloon is up at the time and at the height
Is that
required.
the same
It
as
costs
that?
us several $1,000s.
Computer?
And the mailing, I've never done a mailing like this
I
before.
have a,
We did it.
speaker over there,
Generally,
if I
we
could plug
notify
into
direct
that, but
letters
this will
and
fit.
Hubbardston, we notify 1,800 people. The issue is, as you said, Madam Chair, we've done these so many times, what tends to happen is it increases during the day, and then if I say it's gonna be up, all day, and then it's up fine in the morning, and then it blows around in the afternoon, or then it hits a tree or pops or anything, people start complaining, so, we do the best we can with predicting see
do
it
it yet.
as opposed to, I didn't see it because it wasn't up.
One thing we can't, our bylaw only requires them to do it once.
So why
So-
is it why isn't it like a 10 or 11 hour period? Because
Because-
that would,
because
that
what
would
he's
get
saying
different
is-
shifts of work for people.
Yeah, but what he's saying is by the late afternoon, generally the winds come in, so you try to find a time where it's a stable, where the air is fairly stable. Am I saying that correctly from what you told us?
That's correct. You can look at the weather today, and I'm sure the wind speeds were low in the morning, and they just pick up in the afternoon. And that's not universal; it's just general. And we've just had so many problems with people complaining because we put it up that it's too windy, or it gets windier during the day, or it blew down because it was we didn't have to have it up too long. It's just the nature of the technology.
Would it be possible for your crew that comes out to put it up to take, like photographs of it from,
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. What they do is they take photographs from, any public place. So as long as Mallory tells me anytime up until the day before, take a picture from the school or the park or the post office parking lot or the town hall parking lot or, anything like that. And I'll even tell you, we understand that we're relatively close to some historic properties. People are gonna have a question about that, so we'll stand in front of all the historic properties that we know in the area, and we'll take pictures as well. But as long as anyone in town tells Mallory the day before, take a picture here, take a picture there. We can't go on private property for liability purposes, but we can go anywhere in town. Take it from this road or something.
okay, we will try to send you a list of places that we know that are particularly prominent in town. You know, our lookout places, the school, we'll send you a list of 12, and then you send those pictures back and we'll put them on the website.
Yes, and the other thing that we do, Madam Chair, is we do photo simulations. If there is a vantage point that you can see the balloon, take a picture of the balloon, and then we do a photo simulation showing what it will look like from that vantage point, so people can see how good it looks from the different vantage points.
Okay, alright, one more question.
Madam Chair, Mike
Can-
Stahl, 5 Lombard Road. I don't think, no matter when you do this test, there's gonna be somebody that quote-unquote may be interested in it and won't be able to view it. But I'm sure there's a technological solution. Can take a video of it from a couple of different places, post that on the town website, and that would probably meet the needs of many people. Could
Could you-
even live stream it. People could check it from work, you know, say, okay, it's at noon, we're gonna live stream.
Have you ever live streamed?
I've never done that before. We take lots of photographs, and that's kind of the best we can do. And one of the reasons why we advertise it is so that people can go on their own private property and take a picture from there if they're so inclined. So, and in this case, everyone in town got noticed. So,
Okay, we will send you the list,
Perfect.
of places and, with a map, with markings, if you like.
yeah.
And I'll try to get that out to you soon, we'll email it,
That's perfect. Like I said, I gotta give the consultants a notice the day before, so you can just prep it.
okay,
That's
alright.
fine.
okay. Alright, anything else? We have lots ahead of us on this agenda. Okay, thank you for coming, and we'll see you on the
All right,
sixteenth,
thank you very much.
and we'll be in communication. Okay, thanks, Ms.
Perfect, thank
Parisi.
you.
Remind me, since you're Mallory tonight, that we gotta get him a list of places, okay? Alright,
Does do Bluetooth too, but I don't think.
We're gonna try to improve the sound here,
If that-
Oh,
give
yeah,
us just a
yeah.
moment.
okay, hang on
I
a
don't know if
second.
that'll fit.
Thought there was a port right here.
Well, then you gotta change speaker settings.
And then test it out with Francois, cause I always have trouble hearing Francois. Cause I'm deaf, not because he doesn't speak loudly, but.
Okay, save the system default lineup. Francois, can you just say a couple words for us? Let's see if we can get that to work.
I guess not.
Oh.
Francois?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hey,
Wow.
much better.
Excellent.
Thank you, Francois. Now we can hear you
Loud and
better.
clear, right?
Yes, much
Yeah,
better.
Francois, do you have an echo?
I do not.
Perfect.
Excellent.
All right.
So we just need to make some adjustments to the panelists here.
I know there were some attendees who were indicating that they could not hear very well. I'm not sure if this may help.
Does that help you? Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't have a microphone in it, so it's only helping for the public that's in the room, but it's making a pretty big difference for them.
Oh, okay.
That's all right. We have a nice public presence tonight. Okay, so actually the next item on our agenda, and we're getting close, Streeter Road people, is 69 Gardner Road, the site walk greenhouse situation. And I don't know, is
So-
Damon Schmidt here?
Yep, so we have Damon.
So, to
Damon's
sort of,
coming online, he's not
okay.
there yet. Damon, do you have anybody else with you that we need to promote? Can you hear us, Damon?
Damon,
He might be muted. Or not present.
but I want him to hear what you have to say, right? So, Damon? He's usually pretty proficient at this. I guess we could skip over and come back.
Damon, you're on mute if you don't realize.
Alright, I'm in now. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Alright.
To the public, we're showing you to the public, Damon, put your face on if you can.
Yep, and Damon, do you have anybody else you need us to promote to a panelist that's with you?
No, I got it. Brendan, you have to be quiet, buddy. I'm sorry. Alright, nope, I'm just all by myself.
Okay, alright, so, Damon Schmidt, owns the property at 69 Gardner Road, is one of our outdoor grow facility, marijuana facility there. And he has recently put up a greenhouse with the permission of the planning board. It was part of his amended special permit. And then what started this whole putting him back on the agenda, a couple of things. One of which is the town got a call from the CCC, which is the Cannabis Control Commission, looking for is the greenhouse as proposed. And so Bill Murray is the one most familiar with the plans. So we asked him to go out, meet with them, and take a look at the greenhouse. And then there are two other issues, which I don't know whether we're gonna reach tonight, but we'll try. Do you wanna address the greenhouse issue first?
So I went out there this afternoon with Damon, walked around the site. It looks almost exactly as presented, as he presented to me. The greenhouse is potentially placed over the residential, over the commercial line into the residential, but not by a significant amount. And as he reminded me, zoning allows an encroachment, and I think he's less than the encroachment.
The
so
50 feet, yeah.
Yeah, so he complies with zoning.
Okay.
It's a very neat site, and Damon sent me earlier this afternoon 2 aerial photographs, which I put in the G drive this afternoon. Yep. So he's got some baby plants in the ground, and that is what it looks like. He's got some baby plants in the ground, and he's slowly working his way to populate the site. So I would say that portion of what he's talking about is in compliance.
Okay.
I have not had an opportunity to take that and compare it to the decision,
The
because
maps.
it all happened this afternoon.
Okay, so can you generate a letter to us to send to the CCC
Sure.
that, you took a site view, it all matches up?
Yep.
Uh,
He did, by the way, have the surveyor stake the zoning line,
Okay,
so that you could clearly see where it is in relationship to that line.
I don't think they want a big long letter, I
Well,
don't.
I shouldn't be the one to write it then.
They're just, I mean, I got the feeling that if you could find the right person to have put on the phone, they might have taken it from what Mallory said, they're just looking for
Yep.
for assurances from the town.
Mm.
Okay, so Damon, I know there are two other issues you're interested in. One, taking up, but we really have a big agenda tonight, so I'm just gonna take up the one, which is,
Right.
so, for the public, our special permit, because we're worried about the aquifer, draining the aquifer and the terrain with his operation, we put a limit on the water that he can use, and it was, so many gallons per day, and he wants to alter that to be so many per month, so that he can, on the rainy days, not rain, not water, and on 3 dry days, he could
Bank it. Essentially
bank it, and I told him, well, you can't bank June to August when you got the drought, you gotta, so his latest request is to bank it just within the 30 days, right? No carryover, am I right, Damon?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing for us is, we're every day, and we have to we want to water the entire field at once. So, if we water twice or 3 times a week, that's probably more realistic. And I'm just worried that 5,000 gallons, we already can see what we're using with just a little bit of amount that we're doing by hand. I'm just worried that that's not going to work. So if, even if it was weekly, something where, if we, instead of me getting storage tanks, that's my other alternative, because I'll just get storage tanks and start using, putting 5,000 gallons away every day. One way we'll get the water, but I thought it was easier for everybody involved if instead of me getting storage tanks, we just changed the language from 5,000 gallons a day to, an average of 5,000 gallons a day.
Per week or per month or?
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, so if at the end of the week, we use 35,000 gallons, that would average 5,000 gallons a day.
Okay.
I just don't think when we water, we're going to be able to water that entire field with 5,000 gallons.
Okay, so I had referred this question, because I don't know too much about this stuff, to Bill about water consumption, and he said he wanted you to make the concrete suggestion and then to produce something from your
Hydrogeological engineer.
saying it
Yep.
wouldn't have adverse effects on the aquifer.
So I don't want him to be wishy-washy. I want him to say 35,000 gallons a week will not negatively affect the aquifer if utilized on a regular basis. And I know your hydrogeological engineer. He's a very smart, upright, and forthright guy. If he puts that in writing, I would be comfortable saying that's a reasonable thing. He's a registered professional engineer. This is what he does for a living.
Yeah, and then, we'll have a better idea hopefully in 3 to 4 weeks once the field's, full. And we just got our permit for the well, for that second well to conduct the test maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So we're trying to get somebody in there to drill that second well and do the test. It's, I just don't think we're gonna get that done before the field's full, so.
When you say the second, Damon, you mean the well that's located further away towards the DCR land, right?
Well, the board, you wanted me to run the test where we drilled a new well, and then we're gonna run the current well that we have, and we're gonna test the new well to see if that well goes down.
Okay,
And
now
we'll
I
come
remember.
back to you, but that's just, it's gonna take a couple months for that. In the meantime, if I had this average of 5,000 gallons a day, I'm not worried that my 30 or 40,000 plants are gonna die.
I think based on the presentation from your engineer before, that he'll probably be able to give you a reasonable letter. He won't guarantee in writing because it's Mother Nature, but he'll probably be able to tell you, and he did say to the board, it's a pretty big aquifer, it has a reasonable recharge rate. He can probably give you a defined amount that he would be comfortable saying wouldn't impact the abutters or the environment.
All right, I will reach out to him.
Okay, don't do it sooner rather than later, because you don't wanna, if it's a short-term
Yeah, I'm
problem
gonna do
for
it
you.
tonight, so
Okay,
we're getting to that point.
our next meeting is the 16th, because
Okay.
we've got town meeting, okay?
Awesome.
Okay,
Can we just
Damon,
agree, Madam Chair? I'm sorry to interrupt here. Can we just agree that the periodicity that is in question here is on a weekly basis, is correct? Average on a per week basis.
is that what we're doing, Damon? Average per week?
We'd be fine with that.
Okay,
I
alright,
just don't wanna be in a situation where I'm worried about my plants dying, you know what I mean?
yes,
No,
yes,
no,
okay.
neither are we, but we want to make sure that we have the consistency in terms of how it is that we're going to be measuring this here, and I would suggest that we do this not more than a week intervals.
Alright,
Okay, we have a plan, thanks Damon,
alright, thank you,
we'll see you on the 16th. Okay,
alright, thank you, bye-bye.
okay, thanks, now finally, Streeter Road people. You've learned a lot of interesting things, right? Cell towers, a marijuana field. Alright, so, first of all, I wanna start with, sort of setting setting what's happened here. Is the town appointed the planning board to be the Affordable Housing Committee. And the town, this was 3 years ago now, and we did, as the Affordable Housing Committee, exhaustive searches of what land the town owns that could possibly be used for any kind of affordable housing. Affordable housing can be 1 unit, can be 10 units. The definition of an affordable housing unit is a unit that's affordable to people that make less than 60% of the median area income. As a household income or as an individual income, they would qualify for that, right? And then moderate goes up to 80%. And we know from the statistics, we have a lot of residents in this town that don't make 60% of the area mean income, right? And the state wants you to have 10% of your housing stock in town be affordable housing. So we have something like, you just did that count, it's in the report, 1,600 units in town of housing. So we should have 160 units that are affordable to those people that make less than 60% of the median income. And we have 48. So we're way, way, way off. We're supposed to be 10% and we have 3%. So we're looking for a way to expand affordable housing. And what we did find out is since the town owned nothing, literally nothing, that wasn't a graveyard or wetland, already in use, right? Except the gravel pit, and it has lead contamination. That was going to be what we were gonna try to put senior housing there on Pitcherville. So, the suggestion was made that we look at what properties are in tax foreclosure, people that haven't paid their taxes for years and years and years, and we try to acquire some of those properties. So these 2 lots, which are shown on your plan, were acquired through that process. We went through the land court, the owners did not come forth and claim them, they did not pay the back taxes. So now, the town owns them, not the Affordable Housing Committee, but the town. But the town says, since this is the greatest need, the housing committee, the Affordable Housing Committee gets the first look and the first dibs if something can be done to try to develop some affordable housing in that area. The only affordable housing in town right
Madam Chair?
now are the senior units at Hubbardston
Madam Chair,
House.
there was a comment online.
Just quickly, there is an audience that is unable to hear you very well, and I would ask that you kindly move the laptop in your direction so that you can project your voice into the microphone that is.
Oh,
With
sorry,
the
Francois, thanks for saying that. Well, this is kind of all background anyway, but,
Much better, thank you.
okay, but I wanted you to know the background, okay? So this isn't written in stone that this is gonna be housing, this is where we are, right? Obviously, people don't just let good land go into tax taking, and this is very difficult land, all right, to develop or to do much with. But we set it out, to Places Associates to evaluate it. Does it have any potential that we could put any housing units on it to help alleviate it? My point was, the point before that was the only affordable housing units in town right now are Hubbardston House, right there at, what's the road there? That's, it's 60, yeah. And it has, if you're a senior and wanna get into that house, you wait 7 years. That's how long the list is, on average, the turnover. So that's how bad the affordable housing problem is for seniors. And we have a few group homes, about 9 units in group homes, 13 maybe. And we have 1 Habitat for Humanity house, which we're building right now on Ragged Hill Road. Okay, so that's it. So I know this is your backyard, I know everybody's concerned about it, but I want you to understand the problem and how we got to where we are, okay? And having said that, so this is the first review that's been done, it's a pretty comprehensive review, and we are interested in what you have to say, and we haven't made any decisions, but, with that, I'll turn it over to Bill Murray.
Okay. So.
Now, get this down where
Let me
Bill
move the
can hear.
laptop over to you first.
Alright. We need an external microphone for that now.
Yeah, working on a budget
Halfway
here.
The speaker is $20. I bought it on the way in because I forgot the one from work. So again, Bill Murray, we're planners, landscape architects, civil engineers, and land surveyors. I'm a resident of the town of Hubbardston, and in August I'll be here for 30 years. So I'm also on the capital planning and improvement committee, and we only work for the town of Hubbardston. I don't do private work in the town. But external to the town of Hubbardston, we work for developers all over the state. We principally do public safety projects for towns and communities, but we do all sorts of other things. So my firm has done this for a long time, and I've done it for 37 years. And yeah, this is a really tough piece of property, and I think everybody knows it. So the first thing you need to know is I walked the property briefly, but this is substantially a paper study because there's a vast amount of information that I can get online. And we have found through the years that the latest information that we can get online is pretty darn accurate. Are the wetlands going to be precise? No, but good enough for what I'm trying to do. And what I'm trying to do is take a screenshot of what's possible out here, because there's a variety, and that's what this map kind of shows. There's a variety of requirements, environmental requirements that we have to look at, something like 90. And we listed off a lot of them in our written report. The short story is there's virtually no access off of Old Westminster Road. That's all wetlands. Everybody knows that. There's a stream that runs through there, it's swamp. The town of Hubbardston's regulations say that your driveway must come through your lot frontage, which would be that. And if there was dry upland land that we could gain access to from there, that would all of a sudden change the perspective of this whole project, but it doesn't work that way. There is a separate strip which we show here on a ZOC survey plan as an access strip, and it has easements for curb roundings on either side that was originally designed into it. So this is between 32 and 34 Streeter, and it's 50 feet wide. So looking at that, I said, okay, what are the development options that we can do? And in our zoning bylaw, we have something called an open space and we looked at all the natural conditions. I'll get into those in a little bit more. We have something called an open space residential development. And what an open space residential development is you have a big piece of land, the planning board wants you to develop a more compact development and keep the big empty spaces around it. But it has some real basic and very strict criteria, which is to say the number of lots that you get in open space residential development are based on the number of lots that you can get by right using a standard subdivision with no waivers. Won't work on this property, I just can't make it work. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So, all in all, it's got enough land area, but it doesn't have frontage and access, so we can't do an open space residential development. Then there's another one called a senior residential development. Like, I don't know if anybody knows, off of Old Princeton, there's Moosehorn Hill. That's a senior residential development. The one off of Gardner Road, that was sort of.
No, what is it?
In any case. So if it's a senior development
Orland.
has different criteria for
Madison Green,
Madison Green, thank you.
off of 68.
Right. A senior residential development has different criteria. It requires 20 acres and 200 feet of frontage on an existing way, but it grants the planning board the ability to waive requirements if it's in the best interest of the town. An open space residential development doesn't let the planning board waive certain requirements, but under a senior it does. So that we think if we were to do a senior development, the maximum number of units would be 8 that we could get in there using all of the criteria that I've talked to you about. But and that might work, but I honestly don't think this piece of land, being on the periphery of the town in the northeast corner, way out there, is really appropriate for a senior residential development. There's no sidewalks on Streeter Road, there's no sidewalks anywhere, and I will get to Streeter Road in and of itself in a minute. So then, really, I think that the best options for the development, and you have to remember, my job is to see, first off, what the maximum development potential is. And I don't ignore all sorts of other factors. But first I start and say, okay, the maximum we can get. This was always intended to be an access strip as a subdivision road to get to the backland, because it says so right on the plan, and the deeds also say for a future road. It also says if there's no future road, then maybe it goes to the town or whatever, but the town now owns it. Our subdivision regulations required a dead-end street be no longer than 500 feet measured to the end of the cul-de-sac. Well, the ZOC plan says that this is 416 feet on the southerly side, and then we're allowed 120 foot cul-de-sac. Well, if I add 120 plus 416, I'm well over the 500 foot requirement. But the planning board is allowed in their regulations to waive the length of cul-de-sac for specified reasons, which is topography, access, all those kind of things. So, using a standard subdivision, which is something that the planning board knows, this is something that they do, a subdivision. We can, with a standard cul-de-sac, which is the small line, we'd be beyond the 500 foot length, so the planning board would have to grant a waiver. But we could get a duplex on this upland area here. If we wanted to do a multifamily, I think that we could get 4 multifamily units in the project, because that's the maximum that's allowed under zoning. And there's some machinations. The planning board is allowed to grant a 200 foot cul-de-sac. We don't need a 200 foot cul-de-sac, we need a 130 foot cul-de-sac. So that the planning board has the authority and the power, if they believe it's in the interest of the town and works to the interest of the property, to make a subdivision work. So we're still looking at 8 to 4 units. And of course, a senior development would be 2 bedrooms probably per unit. A multifamily might be 3 to 4 bedrooms per unit, it all depends. Then there's another machination, or another permitting system that's called a comprehensive permit. And a comprehensive permit is a permit that's issued by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they act as the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, the Board of Health, and all the other boards in town. And they grant a permit for the development. So what happens under a comprehensive permit, state regulations stay in place, Title V, water supply, all those kind of things. But town regulations essentially get waived, so that the development on this piece of property would then be restricted by how many wells can I get out there and what kind of septic systems. We can get anywhere up to 15 units per acre, and can actually get more than that. And I forget what the upland is over here. It's like 9 acres. So a comprehensive permit is a permissible thing to do. The only reason that a town has to deny a comprehensive permit is for health, safety, and welfare reasons and non-compliance to state regulations. And I can't imagine that this planning board or the Affordable Housing Committee would endorse a comprehensive permit project of significant magnitude, because, so now I'm gonna get into some of the constraints. All of you people that live on Streeter Road, you all have septic systems. So you know that the soil perks, and you can get a septic system out there. And I know that the type of soil that's out there isn't really great for a septic system, but it works. So I'm pretty confident that if we go back in here and we dig some holes, we're probably gonna get some perk tests at work. We're gonna be able to put a septic system back there. The other very large constraint is water supply. Depending upon the number of bedrooms, that regulates how many, what can be supplied by public water supply. So a well serving 22 bedrooms is the maximum you can have. If you go to 23, the well all of a sudden becomes jurisdictional under the state, and the amount of regulations that go along with it are massive. So that's going to be a constraint. But this property has uplands on the other side, and we could plunk some wells down over here, run lines across the wetlands, which is allowed, and therefore we would have our septic systems and our buildings back in here. So I'm going to keep going on some constraints. You see this blue line in the center and the diagonal stripe? So most of our town is DCR controlled, Department of Conservation and Recreation, because most of our town is tributary to the Ware River intake. DCR control is way down at the pond. They don't actually exert control, which is very unusual. But the state considers this a tributary to the pond, and they consider it a tributary to a public water supply. So this blue diagonal hatch is what we call a Zone A. I can't put a septic system in a Zone A. I can't put drainage systems in a Zone A. And I'm not supposed to put a building in a Zone A. I can put a road through it. I can put utilities through it. But what you do in a Zone A is very restricted, very much like the DCR. This horizontal green hatch is floodplain. So that's the 100-year floodplain, and I'm not supposed to build in that. So it really does leave this. Now, there are lots of different machinations when we go to design projects. If we submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals and said our frontage is completely blocked by wetlands, and this is not a reasonable access, and the Zoning Board of Appeals says yes, then we're allowed to fill wetlands to get to the uplands. In this case, that would be a stretch, because it's a massive amount of wetlands we would have to fill. So I would never recommend to the planning board or a future affordable housing committee that's something they should ever consider. The only way to get to this backland is through street or road. Now let's talk about your road. When you develop a project, you have to look at the road system that you're connecting to. And street or road, well, it's a recently accepted public way, as I see many familiar faces from.
Can we reverse that? Alright, go.
It is, I don't know how much additional traffic it can withstand in terms of health, safety, and welfare. So that I wouldn't recommend any I don't recommend a senior development out here, because I don't really see the police and fire department getting there to a senior development through street or road on a marginal basis. I can see for residential units, either 2 duplexes or some combination thereof. And I don't think that would be overtaxing what street or road can handle for a standards, a duplex or a single family home. So that's the bottom line, is what we're looking at is probably for duplexes or for a quad, or I don't think you can get single family homes because the zoning just is prohibitive. We don't have enough frontage. So the path that I'd recommend, if this were a private client, I'd recommend that a subdivision be applied for 2 lots and put two duplexes on each lot, and that would hardly be overbearing on street or road and its potential. So that's kind of the paper chase that I've done so far. But like all good engineers, I'm not an engineer, but I'll get into that. We have clauses. So I haven't gone out there and I haven't dug the soil. I am a soil evaluator, certified soil evaluator. And until we go out and dig the soils, we're not going to promise anything. So we have to go out there, we have to look. And I was talking to the chair earlier and I said, the way we approach a project like this is we look for the most informative piece of information that we can get that costs the least amount to do, and then we proceed from there. So if I go out there and I dig test holes with an excavator and I see soils that are promising, well, that's good, because if I go out there and I see soils that are not promising, it probably kills the whole project right there. Then the next step is we start getting into expensive money, where we define where the wetlands truly are, because where the wetlands truly are is where the restrictive zones are. We define all these property lines, so we know in great detail what we're talking about. And we would be looking to define that area, so that we would know then, we'd know the topography coming in, we would know, yeah, we have soils. I'm not worried about getting a well out there, because I can in fact put a well in a wetland or in a zone A, and that's okay. So it's a stagger step kind of thing that you do. You take it incrementally, and each step that you do, you're looking for the failure point, and if you get past the failure point, you go to the next. So soil testing would be the first thing that we would recommend the town pursue. You'd simply go out there with one of those little small excavators and dig a few holes throughout this whole area and confirm that the soils are suitable for a septic system. Then you go to the next step, you define the wetlands, you stake out the property lines, you do a concept plan to verify what I've already said in the report, and then you take the next step. Somewhere in there, in making a submission to the planning board, you'd probably make a preliminary submission to the planning board. And that's where you would ask the planning board to determine what is an acceptable level of impact on street or road. And you get to have a say in that during any public process. And this planning board, as you can tell, they want input. They appreciate the input. So that's the short story, and I can go into intimate detail, and I could talk for a very long time, and I write a lot. But I'm happy to answer questions.
Can you just, before you flip your board again?
I've been told
So-
to do worse.
So this entire lot is, both lots, right, is 37 and a half?
It's actually
Oh,
this
three-
lot,
this-
this
yeah.
lot,
And-
and that is a separate parcel.
And it's all 37 and a half acres, roughly, right?
Yeah, close to 40.
Close to 40. And
Yeah.
the buildable area, I mean, I guess if you have that upland area on the other side of the stream, but the white area
Yeah.
is 8 acres.
I'd have to go back and find my numbers,
I
but
think.
yes.
So out of the 37 acres, only 8 is buildable.
Well, if you could get to this, you could count that as buildable. So, under the regulations, so under the senior regulations, what is buildable is described as uplands, not wetlands, not excessive slopes or ledge.
Okay.
It doesn't say you have to get to it. So under the senior, I can take this uplands and add that uplands, I didn't even bother with that, and say that's how many I can get.
But we're not gonna do seniors, so as a practical matter, we're stuck
Right.
with our 8 acres.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right.
So there is then also this issue, you know, so it's what can you build in that frame, and then the rest of the land could be what?
Anything the town wants it to be.
So it could go to open space and recreation.
Yep.
It could,
It could be put in a conservation restriction, it could be, or it could be attached to the, if you were gonna create 2 lots for the duplexes, you could give it to them so they pay taxes on it. And you could still put an open space easement on it because it's the town's. And the town can do with it, they can dictate the terms.
so we haven't had a lot of discussion with you folks. I do know from Christopher, who lives actually near you, who's on the board, that there are hiking trails and it's a popular recreation area. So there would be an effort made to retain those trails and to retain access for the town. Cause somebody asked me, well, would the town consider selling me the land in my backyard, you know? Off, my thinking is, you know, so you could extend those lots, right? Is no, they probably wouldn't, because I think there's this concept that what isn't used for housing should be conserved.
I mean, so much of it is wetland, so much of it is, you can't get there from here. Certainly if somebody owned this lot, and are you here tonight?
I'm on the other side of it, I'm here.
Here?
No, on the
I'm
other side of the
32.
access.
You're 32?
Yeah.
Alright, just as an example. If you bought all of this, you can get more than 4 lots.
I don't, I just wanna leave it the way it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been there for 27 years, and, you know, just the wildlife alone back there, you're gonna displace as a result
Yep.
of building back there.
Yep.
Plus, we've all used it throughout those years. You know, my kids have played out there for, you know, 22 years, you know, out in that area, and explored and learned things out in the wilderness out there. I came from, you know, multifamily housing my whole life. I came to Hubbardston for the reason of living out in the woods and being quiet, in a quiet place. I didn't come out here to have more houses, you know, where I live. You know, I was sold on the idea that I was gonna live on a dirt road, and, you know, that access strip was there, but it'd never be built on because it was all wetlands.
This was part of all of that at one point.
Right, I mean, I could tell you from my house alone, so I'm at 32, we had a gentle slope to my backyard. And because of Title V, they brought in tons and tons and tons of fill.
Yeah.
I mean, my elevation is up 15 feet from my backyard because it wouldn't pass Title V.
Yeah.
So I think you're gonna run into the same problem in the back, because it's that same area, it's wetland, that's why they had to build it up.
Yep. And I say in my report, groundwater is 2 to 4 feet. So Title V requires from seasonal high groundwater to the bottom of the leach field, 4-foot offset, minimum. So if groundwater's at 2 feet, the bottom of the system is sticking 2 feet out of the ground, and then it's another 2.5 feet in the air and fill. But since you built your house, we've got a whole lot new technologies for septic systems. They're not space age technologies. Gravity still runs them, but they work better. They treat the effluent better, and they don't take as big a footprint. And you can put them on a slope, unlike the old ones where you build the helicopter landing pad. We can get away from that these days. You know, under a comprehensive permit, the only thing that is restricting here, other than the good nature of the zoning board of appeals, is what the land can hold space-wise.
If you had low
You
income.
gotta address your question, Dorothy.
Sorry.
Oh, yes.
If you had,
Okay.
if you have
Can
low.
you give your name, because we're
Maria-
supposed to pick it up?
Maria Tarigny.
Okay, thank you.
If you have low income housing out there, that property would be owned by a private company,
No, not necessarily.
then would you
I mean,
get
the Habitat
taxes?
House, the
Would you-
Habitat for Humanity House is owned by the lady who bought it. She put
Okay.
down $1,500, she put in 400 hours of work, and she buys it, and it's deed restricted, so that when she goes to sell it, it's a 3-bedroom ranch, it has to be sold to somebody that makes no more than 80% of the median income in the area, right? So it can be in private ownership with a restriction.
Okay, so you would get taxes on the property.
Yes,
Even
absolutely.
if it's low income.
Right, and if you did something, there are areas in town, if you look at the bottom of Mount Jeff, there are some 4-unit townhouses. And I think they're they're individually owned with an
Condo, yeah.
association, is that right?
Yeah.
So you could do that, you know, where they own the building like condominiums, townhouses. But it's pretty restricted, you know, how many things can fit and what we could do, and we want to make that point to you tonight, so nobody should go home thinking, oh my gosh, somebody's gonna put a huge high-rise
It's gonna be.
tenement in my backyard, that's
all kinds of
really, really
cars out
limited
there.
what we could do,
If
right?
I may, Madam Chair.
Yep.
Is it true that changes though, if this goes to auction and somebody else ends up purchasing the property? Is there potentially a pathway for somebody purchasing this property at auction to try to put together a comprehensive permit?
Okay, so I'm gonna answer that very carefully, and I'll explain my carefully. The short answer to the question is, we don't meet the 10%. So if a community meets 10% of affordable units, then you can't walk into the community and say, I want a comprehensive permit, and I'm gonna shove it down your throat. But if you do not meet the 10%, they can walk into the community and they can say, I'll shove it down your throat. So the reason I'm answering, I don't sound like I'm being careful, but here it comes. Hubbardston doesn't attract that kind of development. And in this particular case, there's a really good argument to say there's a maximum number of units between 4 and 8, in my opinion, where you're crossing the threshold of public safety, health, and welfare. So the short answer is there is absolutely the possibility of a developer buying it and doing that, but it's not likely in Hubbardston because we're not a target community like we would have around 495. So yes and no.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
you just.
can you just give me your name
I'm sorry,
again?
Jim Nason,
Okay.
32 Streeter.
Cause I don't think you did before,
You
sorry.
you had said earlier though the town wouldn't sell the land because we as Streeter Road would probably be willing to entertain the idea of purchasing that parcel of land just to leave it as it is.
Okay,
If the town was willing to sell it.
I probably wasn't really clear. So, the only claim that the Affordable Housing Committee has on this land is that we fronted the money from CPC funds to get it foreclosed, okay? We did this with other lots in town as well, and people redeemed them, right, and then sold them to developers. There's one right on, down the road from you, that was done on, before it went to land court. So, the town really owns it. If we decide it's not suitable for affordable housing, or there's too much resistance to it, we're gonna tell the town, we would like our 10,000 back that we put up in CPC money for affordable housing, and you can have the land. But it's very likely that they would sell the land, because that's what they did on Ragged Hill Road. There were 4 lots on Ragged Hill Road, and we said, the town's owned them since 1964, can we have them for affordable housing? We were thinking 4 Habitat houses. And the town's response was, no, you can have 1, but we need to sell those lots, we need the revenue, right? So, they put 1 aside for the Habitat house, and they did sell the other 3 at market rate. So no, I cannot say the town won't sell it, I cannot say that, I can say this, if the Affordable Housing Committee gets it, and we do houses with it, that uses all the good land that's there.
Right.
And the rest would be set aside,
As
cause
open
that's the
space.
value, right, so it would then that would become, probably open space restricted or conservation restricted. Does that make sense? 'Cause-
Madam Chair, I am sorry to interrupt you again here, but I do ask again, we have some people from the audience, from the, who are indicating that it's very hard to hear, and if and when you are speaking, if you could please project into the microphone.
Oh, okay, do I need to repeat that, you wanna ask them?
I think there's some question here, there's some questions about the prior question, so
Good.
if you
Oh.
could maybe repeat
Okay,
that,
okay,
please, that
well,
would be
short
excellent, thank you.
Short version is, this property is actually owned by the town, not the Affordable Housing Committee. But the Affordable Housing Committee, through CPC funds, put up the money to get it foreclosed with the understanding that we would have the first look at it to see if it could be used for affordable housing. This is the first look we had at it, nobody walked it first, it was a big chunk of land and tax title, right? So if the affordable housing people get it, I mean, if it's deemed suitable, there's soils, there's you folks that have to be considered, the town would have to vote on all of it. But if it winds up being in affordable housing, there would not be an effort to sell the remaining land, cause the remaining land is all wetland, it wouldn't be approachable, and we would suggest it be preserved through, because for public good, through conservation restrictions. Now, if the Affordable Housing Committee decides that this isn't a suitable place for any affordable housing, then we just turn it back to the town and the town does what they want with it. And I think it's very likely they would sell it if they could, because that's what happened on Ragged Hill Road, and they're pretty open about, the need for cash in this town, right? They would rather turn it into some kind of tax title property, even if it was maybe just one house for somebody that wanted the 40 acres. Now, I haven't talked to the town about that, but I think that's a logical outcome. So, to correct his saying, when I said it would be preserved, that's, if it's in affordable housing, what's left over would be preserved. Otherwise, if we turn it back just as we acquired it and do nothing, then it's up to the town, it's not up to the Affordable Housing Committee.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think that it would be fair to say that it would go for the highest bidder, potentially.
Yeah, in all
Yeah.
likelihood, it would, unless there was a groundswell of support in the town to try to get it into one of the land trusts or something. But I don't know what the appetite is for that, but there's definitely a risk of it being sold to the highest bidder if it goes past a recommendation from us.
Which then puts it in jeopardy for somebody coming in with a 40B, correct?
Yeah, or just somebody that wants to buy it, to wanna own 40 acres, right? And then say, okay, I don't want the public.
I'm just saying that the
to post
possibility
it.
does exist for somebody coming in and do exactly what Mr. Murray had described earlier, which is basically come in and try to put a fairly significantly augmented development there.
Right.
With the caveat that we are not yet a high target town for it.
True, but we also have to realize that the dynamics of the urban settings and where people are moving is making Hubbardston a lot more attractive. And I just want to point that out because there has been quite some development in the last several years in towns that are not only outside of 495, but even outside of the 190 belt.
Okay. Anybody else have questions? Cause we do have other items on our agenda, but, yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, Mike Stahl, 5 Lombard Road. Maybe Mr. Murray is more appropriate to answer this, but where is the northern White Cedar Swamp and Partridge Pond in relationship to that parcel?
I don't know.
Go ahead and flip
I
that.
imagine it's to the north, but
Go ahead and flip that over. It
Love-
one of those to the
Lovewell
right.
is here.
What's that?
Lovewell.
Lovewell is
Yeah,
here.
go to the right, that long blue vertical. Is that labeled Partridge Pond?
It's labeled Westminster State Forest.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah.
And I do say in my report that we are approximately on the Westminster-Hubbardston line, but I can't tell you that
Okay, I
the
just
line
thought it
might
might be
encroach
labeled.
onto the property and we might actually have land in Westminster, or it could be the other way around. It's that close, and we haven't surveyed it.
Thank you.
You have land in Westminster.
Yeah.
Cause I own the part just south of there, and I'm like 3 feet into Westminster.
Yeah, right.
So, I think from here, the next thing, I mean, it's a question about whether we do have resources to some funds, that we could look at some of those soil testing, which would give us some more definitive answers. But I think maybe I'd like to just stop here, and that would be the next step the board would take, what he described, right, is some soil testing or some, and make those decisions later, because we've got other things on the agenda, and I'd like to have more of our members here. If you signed up on this list and you want to, I don't wanna get in too much trouble with my administrator, but check the agenda, right? And if you see it on the list and wanna come back to the next meeting, you can. That's what the next meeting, it might not be the 16th, it might be down the road, but would be the next step. And if you go home and you read this report and you have thoughts, you can send comments to us, email, or and if you are interested in serving on a committee that would work at developing some sort of, as we say, 4 to 8 is the maximum you're looking at, maybe 2 to 8 units, that wants to work on that committee and try to help figure out how to do that, let me know. Yeah.
I just had a quick question. So what did we have did we think what is gonna happen with the road exactly if these went in? Because of all the extra cars that are gonna be traveling on the road that's already kind of stressed out?
The road's barely passable as it is right now.
there,
pretty
it's,
tough, but the
it's-
fire department has said they can get up and down it any time of the year. So if they can get to this
Right.
development and they can get to your houses, then it would be about the same to getting to this development.
Right, so my question is like, is the road gonna be like paved because there's gonna be like multiple extra cars on
No.
the road? Is like, the bump's gonna be filled in more consistently?
Do you know where Halfrey Road is? Right on the Rutland Town line. So it's a cut through, from Route 62 down to Route 68. It's a gravel road. And somebody built a subdivision right off of that. It's a beautiful paved subdivision road. So it's a subdivision road off of a gravel road, and that would be the synonymous thing here. Their driveway would be paved, would be pretty much a driveway, connecting to your stone enhanced road.
We can make the developer make some improvements in the road, but not pave it.
Only into the 40B,
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Okay, well, we can press, I know it's not a lot more trips a day if you're talking another 4 units. Even 8 units is
Right.
not a lot more, and it's 2/10 of a mile, cause I did measure that down. So it's not a huge distance, you know, it's about a quarter of the way down.
We
I
do
mean,
have
we
some
can't
of
really
the
tell
hand
which way
raised.
they're gonna be traveling from on the road.
They could come from both directions,
Mhm.
up and down Streeter Road.
Mhm.
Not necessarily coming from
That's
Old
true.
Westminster, they could be coming from
And
the
un-
other way
un-
up.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately.
that would bear the argument that the
It would
entire
be
road
that-
needs to be
Well,
fixed.
that's something
Well,
we
you-
should consider, right?
We
If
said
somebody-
that at town meeting, your road needs to be fixed. I said at town
And we
meeting,
have-
your road
you have
needs to be
somebody else
fixed
who
if the
wants-
town's gonna take it. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we would have made a different decision if we knew we were going to be sitting here today. You know? I wouldn't have signed over
We
like
wouldn't
part of
have
my
signed over the
property
rights to
if
that
I
road.
knew that in back of my house, you know, there could be duplexes.
Would this be impossible if you didn't have that 6 acre that fronts Old Westminster? If you didn't have that 6 acre parcel, you
No.
wouldn't have been able to build, right?
There's a really refined technicality in the Wetlands Protection Act, so you are allowed to fill a wetland. If the only way you can gain access to your uplands is to fill the wetland, because under the logic is, if they don't let you get to your backland to build your house, they've taken the value of everything that you have.
That
But that
wasn't-
is a massive amount of wetlands.
That wasn't my question. If you didn't have that parcel at all,
Yeah,
you couldn't have built out there.
sure, yeah, we
Okay.
can.
You could without that 6 acre parcel.
Without this, yeah,
You could still access it,
yeah, through the strip.
So the strip
and that
is
would be
the only way.
frontage.
You
Well,
make
when-
the frontage through the cul-de-sac
Right,
that
when you,
put in.
the process of
Does that
a
make sense?
subdivision creates frontage.
Okay.
When you build the road, that creates the frontage.
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Do you think,
How much do you need frontage? Like 50 feet wide is enough frontage?
200.
no, that's not the frontage, the frontage is on the cul-de-sac.
It's 200
Oh,
for a
once you
standard.
get
As you've
there.
extended the road,
Okay,
you've built the
once
frontage.
you get there, okay.
We have one more question.
And we have a question over there too, Madam Chair.
Okay, I wanna wind this up though pretty quick. We're, go ahead, this is, says Michelle, although you don't look like Michelle, and
I'm her husband, Eric. My name's
Eric.
Eric Amati. I live at 29th Street Road.
yes,
And I got some comments. So it sounds like it's gonna be kind of a headache all around to try and do different houses and affordable and this and that on the property because of all the reasons mentioned previously. Has the town looked into talking to either DCR or the Division of Fisheries and Wildlife to recoup the approximate $10,000 that you mentioned that you're kind of out of because of this process in order to tie in different properties? And the reason I mention is because this property, the large portion, 35 acres, abuts approximately 163 acres of DCR Westminster property currently. And then with the 6 acres that abuts it off of Westminster Road, there's approximately 15 acres or so of private properties that then abut another 98 acres of state property. And Worms is, last meeting, you spent approximately 35 minutes talking about open space in the town, biomapping, wildlife corridors, et cetera, in regards to natural activities on the landscape. It seems to me that there's a really good opportunity here for the town to utilize this property in the best interest of not only the residents of the town, but also the Commonwealth in regards to several different agencies. And in your own words last week, the town's efforts and time spent on trying to abide by and help with open space, the biomapping, and wildlife corridors. So I throw that out there.
Oh, the open space chapter. You know, I have no idea whether DCR has any interest in it or not, but it could be inquired.
All right, so I actually work for Fish and Game. I made a phone call the other day to the land agent. His name is James McCarthy. I spoke with him. He said he would take a look into it, but historically, Mass Wildlife does not buy properties that are adjacent to DCR. It's a separate agency. There is a land agent that works for DCR that is very approachable. And considering that most of this property is already covered under Section 40 or Chapter 40 under wetlands and is non-buildable, there's approximately 8 acres that you're talking about here to play with for buildings. I think it would behoove the town to contact DCR and some of these other entities in order to recoup the money that you're talking about here, in order to make it right with the town for the expenditures, also to benefit the residents as a whole, as well as it would be, in regards to a lot of the things that you spoke a lengthy time about the previous meeting.
The problem with that is it doesn't do anything to help resolve the affordable housing problem, and we're the Affordable Housing Committee. That's not to say you don't have some merit. It's not so much retrieving our 10,000. It's actually the whole start of this project was to find some land somewhere in town where we could build some affordable units, because we're supposed to be at 10%.
Right, I understand that, but
yeah.
But previously to this taking of the land, because of back taxes, you had none. Now this opportunity opened up, but
Yep.
I mean, what are the repercussions if, the town says, we're not gonna do it for all these reasons? You're gonna get a lot of pushback from Street and Road residents, without a doubt. I think you already know that. So what's the difference between today and 2 years ago when you didn't have it, other than it's here now, there's somewhat of an opportunity. It sounds like you're gonna have a long road to try and do this. I just don't know if it's worth it on all levels, when there may be other opportunities out there for the town to actually look good statewide, as well as for the residents of Hubbard.
Okay, thank you.
If I may,
last word?
if I may, Madam Chair, I just have to reiterate here, and I hear you. Part of what the role that we have as the planning board here, and as the Affordable Housing Committee is to really explore these, and this is why we're having this discussion here, and to look at what the opportunities are. It is difficult to come up with affordable housing in any town, and it has negative connotations for people who live in neighborhoods. But one of the we need to realize, and I'm not speaking to your specific objections, but in general, is that if we don't do something and the town is not proactive about this here, we are going to be facing a situation where we are going to, as a town, have to somebody's going to come in and actually do it for us, and not necessarily with us being in control, the members of the town being in control.
Right.
And so again.
But what does that mean, sir? Does that mean the state's gonna come in, or the federal government's gonna come into Hubbardston and seize town property?
No, that's not what we're saying. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is what was described earlier by Mr. Murray. The potential scenarios do exist where if we are under the 10% affordable housing, that a developer can actually come into a town, buy a piece of property, including this one for all intents and purposes, and basically start developing and say, well, you as a town, the town of Hubbardston, are not in compliance with the 10%, and so therefore I have pretty much a lot more leeway in terms of what I can do, and that again puts us in a situation where we don't necessarily have the control over this here. And that's what we're trying to avoid. We're trying to do it in a manageable way so that the town can control it at the same time by us showing to the state that we're trying to achieve these goals of getting at the 10%. And that's what was explained by Madam Chair earlier. We're woefully under the 10%. We're just barely at the 3% mark right now.
Very good, thank you.
Okay.
And again, I understand your situation, and I part of what we're to do here is to get this kind of a feedback, and reasonable feedback like the ones you're given, and potential other opportunities are certainly things that we're willing to listen to. And if there's massive objections, then yes, we will actually listen to that too. But we need to explore this here. So we as a planning board, I just want to explain that we as a planning board are not trying to impose. If anything, we're trying to get participation. And I appreciate the fact that I'm seeing a lot of people there. I'm seeing participation from a lot of individuals. And more importantly, I applaud Mr. Murray for coming in here and really laying it out in so many different ways, and providing from his guidance perspective, a viewpoint on how this could potentially be developed in such a way that it would be the least amount of inconvenience to anybody. And there is always going to be, anytime one does a development, there is going to be some inconvenience, and we do understand that. And I'll leave it at that. And thank you, I'm assuming Mr. Amati, but thank you very much for your feedback. I think it is important that you provide that kind of feedback from your point of view too.
Okay. All right, anything else you want to add? All right, we have another agenda, so this is the opening discussion about what to do with this piece of property. So, thank you for coming, share your thoughts, and we'll keep you posted. We may do some soil testing and see, that makes sense to me. If it's low groundwater, you have to, but we'll let you know. Check the agendas for upcoming meetings, and if you see it on there, you can either call Mallory or, try not to call the chair. He's gonna be chair soon, but the chair gets kinda overwhelmed. Call Mallory and you might get some information as to what would be there, or just come again.
So if I could just add, next steps would be possibly
Soil testing.
the soil testing, but we don't know for sure until there'll be another meeting, or it'll just be a decision that'll come about and then we'll hear about it after
Well, we'd have to make that decision at a meeting.
Okay, so we'd see it on an agenda first.
Right.
That would be coming up.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we'd have to get estimates on what that would cost and where it would go and, okay? Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Murray.
Pleasure.
Say it again?
Oh,
Yeah, it's we're 28, so the yellow house is kinda sideways.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, a bit.
Are you gonna be around for a little bit longer?
Yeah, I'm just looking to see what's left.
We have a really long driveway,
yeah,
I walked by you with the dog.
I'm hoping not much longer.
Well, because when we get to do new business, I want to
Okay.
hear what that's gonna
This is
be.
my wife, Megan.
Yeah, we are really late
Oh, that's
tonight.
not, well, that's next.
Or if you could take a matter not reasonably discussed by chair.
What are you looking for me to take?
If I could have a quick discussion about a matter not reasonably anticipated by chair related to some reach out that I received from Ryan, Open Space, and the select board.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
I wanna put this on here or something though.
Okay.
Update from Chris on what?
Chicken contingency.
Oh, the chickens.
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
So I wanted to bring it to the board's attention that that there are currently ideas for very early stage contingency plans if avian flu is found at the chicken pen. Because one of the things that's going to happen is all of the chickens will have to be destroyed and then they need to be composted, and there's all kinds of restrictions because they can't be moved far if they contain avian flu. So it either has to be done on site or it has to be done near the property. And there is a working group that's being put together with representatives from planning is now on it, but it was originally open space on the select board. About what to possibly do with this, because one of the first ideas that was presented was that the field on the Malone,
the
on Mount Jeff, on the Malone Conservation Area, and that was actually presented at Open Space last night,
Yes.
and that went over terribly as an idea. So there's been some other things that were suggested, and it might mean working with a private landowner, possibly somebody who is trying to work around their remediation agreement might be able to have an opportunity out of this. Because if there was a gravel pit that was clay instead of sand and it was not in a wellhead area, there was a thought on the open space committee that that might work.
That's a very good idea.
But there is, well, I presented it to the open space committee, so thank you. Because
No,
it's come up in front of us before about people trying to delay or put off remediation, and if someone could do, if this was to happen, and it is a realistic possibility, because there are farms that are right over the border in New Hampshire that have had to destroy their flocks.
Yeah,
So-
no, it's a serious problem.
So it is in the area, and it is something that is not just a academic exercise. It's an actual hypothetical, or rather, it's an actual contingency plan. Excuse me. So I wanted to make sure that popped up on the planning board radar, specifically because I was also asked to participate as a rep from the planning board, and make sure that nobody else on the planning board really wanted to do that before I took that spot.
Why is there nobody from the Board of Health on that board?
I believe there is going to be.
There should.
You should write to them, make sure there's
Yeah,
a
I-
health person.
I-
The other thing I have concerns about with the gravel pit, so,
No, clay pit.
oh, clay pit.
Cataisto, formerly known as Cataisto. It's clay, so it doesn't leach.
Are there any other clay pits in town though? I think that's a real outlier.
I don't think so.
But
He doesn't wanna disturb the
We
he
want-
wants, I mean, they came back to us, I just don't think he'd be interested, but.
It's potentially worth asking, because it could be essentially a public health emergency, and if we get stuck having to do something, it would be good to have it be a thought out plan where we explore all the options, so it doesn't hurt to ask.
Yeah.
Do they have any idea how many, like, the space,
2 acres is what they expect it will require for the compost.
2 acres of dead birds?
Well, they'll actually be in piles layered in wood chips like a,
Compost pit.
yeah. It'll be like a compost tort, with the wood chips and the chickens layered up. And it apparently only takes a matter of weeks, for them to be reduced to nothing. It's actually a very, very efficient process.
Wow.
But,
Very interesting. Yes, we vote for Christopher to be the member of the planning board.
Well, the other thing that comes up with it is there is talk of a meeting at some point next week for the working group. I don't know if it makes sense to see if Bill is potentially available for that.
What?
Could you potentially be available for a meeting on Wednesday? Because there's gonna be a meeting to
In-
kinda
in what
talk
week?
about some ideas.
What's the date?
Next week.
All over the globe next week.
I think we're looking at Wednesday at 2
The
or
first
3.
week.
Hasn't
Oh
been.
no, I know I can't do that. I'm in Concord at 1.
Okay. So I'll be sure to keep the planning board in the loop on it, and because I think there is going to be a chance that we're going to need some expert advice on it. Where we're fortunate that one of the volunteers that's helping out with it is Mark from Open Space, who has a history working with DCR and understands how to read all the maps and such very well. So we can at least get started that way. But
Isn't this
we'll-
isn't this the country hen's responsibility?
It is, but there's also apparently state rules and there's recommendations that some of the plans incorporate the
I
municipality.
mean, it's a great idea to plan ahead,
Yeah.
yeah, but I would think that it would be in Country Hen's best interest to work with the Cataisto pit owner.
Yeah, and that is something that's been talked about in it because yeah, obviously if for some reason Malone ended up being the choice, hypothetically, there would need to be compensation on that because there's currently hay contracts, and also the lack of use for it for a period of time. So whatever the situation is, there would need to be some form of compensation for it, and I haven't heard all the details yet on whether or not what insurance covers it. But that's all stuff that we're looking to work out.
USDA probably.
Yeah, it's very early stage.
Yeah, well, that's smart then.
But yeah, it's very early stage because we're trying to get it right. So.
But
It
that
seemed
is
like
an
one-
inspired thought, the clay pit, that's perfect, that couldn't be more perfect. Cause it doesn't leach.
I just think that
And
the gentleman that owns it now wouldn't be interested, but he might be, you never know,
And it
right? If
leaves
it had a
b-
good paycheck with it and they did the rock remediation and.
yeah, and it leaves behind a layer of very rich compost.
Yeah.
That is otherwise not only good enough to sell or use. So, because while the compost cooks while it's decomposing,
Right.
so it kills off all the pathogens that might be in it. So it is.
Well,
safe
you might
use
just
after the
find
fact.
one of the farmers in town willing to do it.
They would not import, a farm would not import a
pest.
contaminant, yeah.
Oh, any kind of farm, so it's
Yeah.
gotta be.
Yeah, we're fortunate that the process is so efficient that it's estimated it could be done on 2 to 3 acres. There's also all kinds of potential issues with the conservation restrictions, but then again, the conservation restrictions specifically allow farming, and what we're talking about is a branch of farming, because it's not like they're industrial chickens, they're farm chickens, they're being used to produce a food product.
I one of the things, Todd was at that meeting, you know, my husband's on the board too. What I think, he came home and he talked to me a little bit about it, and what he said, the problem is that the country hen has to resolve this situation, and if it gets the avian flu, they have like a minuscule timeline to get those chickens dead and out of there.
Right.
And that it could sink the whole
Yeah.
enterprise if this isn't resolved. So the town, to say, no, the town doesn't have responsibility for it, but it is our biggest income in town. So we do have an incentive to at least try to work with them.
I was not at the select board meeting where it came up, and I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet. So my understanding of what was said there is hearsay based upon what was said at Open Space, but that there were 3 or 4 possible ways it could happen in terms of different pathways, and that almost all of those pathways were non-survivable for them as a business, because there's a lot of things that happen if they have to eliminate their flock. The first one being is, well, they have to get rid of the flock, then they have to clean the barns, they have to dispose of and compost everything, the feed,
Right.
the manure, everything that was on site. And then they have to order chickens, get chickens, the chickens have to mature, and they can't do all of them at once. They have to do them in a rotation so that they have a sustainable business.
Right.
So they would potentially be without a cash flow for a fairly substantial time if it wasn't planned carefully and executed well.
I wonder if they could incinerate them.
There apparently is an incinerator, but it can only handle a maximum of 20,000 chickens a day or something like that. And we were looking at way more than that. And they have to be gone in a certain amount of time.
It's a tough problem. I don't suppose there's any way you get insurance over that.
I'm
For a
sure
chicken
there,
farmer.
I'm sure there is, but I don't think it.
Yeah,
I don't think it makes them whole for.
USDA has insurance, whether they have it or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whether it makes them whole for not operating for as long of a time as they would be is something different.
That's-
But those
they're pretty
details
good
are all
business
gonna be
people,
explored.
They probably are aware of their options, but wow.
So Wednesday, June, Tuesday is the 31st, June 1st?
Yeah, I think so, and they're still working on trying to schedule the working group.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah.
For that dismal but interesting news. Okay, new business, I just wanted to update the board, can Francois hear me? Can you hear me, Francois? Okay, so, one of the things that came over
Can hear
my,
you.
okay. That came through was a request from the DPW to remove a tree that's growing into the right of, that's growing actually into the pavement of Cruz Road. And they say, well, it's a scenic road, and so they submitted a scenic road application. So I said to them, I don't really think you need to, there are exceptions that I think apply to you, and I don't really think you need to go through the scenic road application process, but, and then I cited those provisions. But then I thought, I'm not the lawyer for the town, you know, it's town council, right? And this is likely to come up again and again, so I sent to town council, do they have to do this? Or is it an exception to the scenic road bylaw? In the scenic, I don't know if I can find it quickly now, I'm sorry, I've gotten myself confused here. Anyway, both the scenic road bylaw and the scenic road mass general law, and the tree warden's responsibilities under mass general law have an exception for widening the roads or trees that are a danger, right? So Cruz Road, literally what they've done is, because the pictures are posted on our website, or on our documents, is rather than cut down the tree, they've sort of been paving around it for years, a little bit more and a little bit more. And my sense is and this is holding up the project, a scenic road, you know, by the time you publish it, right? You got your paving project now 2 weeks behind every time you have to get one of these trees down. So I sent to town council and we should get a ruling on it. In the meantime, I think we need to tell, Travis that, you know, continue on with the scenic road in case town council rules against it, right? But are you aware of any rule on that?
I'd have to do what you do,
Okay,
but I'm
alright.
pretty sure there are exceptions for DPWs. And I know that if there is something is determined by the arborist as a hazard tree,
Yes,
if something is leaning over a house and is not in healthy shape, then it's exempt and it has to be removed for health, safety, and welfare. Likewise, a tree on the edge of the pavement and completely inside the right of way.
It actually protrudes into the
it's
road.
completely, it's not
It's
even
not
just
just
inside the
on the
right of way, it's
tree.
actually in the travel lane.
So taking it down damage a stone wall?
No.
The concern that I have with it is yeah, I believe there is an exception that they can work under, and I think that's perfectly fine on this example. But in some of the documents, it was mentioned that, well, there's lots of trees in town like that. So if we're talking about just applying that exemption and going through and cutting many dozens of trees all at once, I think we, in fairness to the public, need to have some kind of process or some kind of hearing, or not hearing, some kind of
A guideline.
public engagement process for people to hear about that and talk about it, instead of just it happening all at once, because
But there is, because it's still a public shade tree. So the tree warden is obligated, even if it's a hazard tree, the tree warden is obligated to post it and have a hearing.
But it doesn't have to be advertised in the paper, or is it the whole thing like the scenic road? Scenic road, we don't send out a butter notice.
No.
Scenic road, we do.
He does advertise. And he has a physical hearing. He can do it on site. Or he's done it here with you on occasion as well.
Okay, well, the exception, which is in both, Mass General Law, Chapter 40, 15C, which is scenic roads, and Chapter 87, shade trees. The same language is contained in both, and in our town bylaw, that says, nothing contained in this chapter shall prevent the trimming, cutting, or removal of any tree which endangers persons traveling on a highway, or the removal of any tree if so ordered by the proper officers for the purpose of widening the highway.
And that would, I think, be a highway superintendent, tree warden, and the board of selectmen.
Right,
Yeah.
so I think that this is that, is an exemption, but, well, town council's gotta weigh in on it.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay, so that's why that's on there. And I gotta remember to tell Mallory that he should go ahead and proceed and not take my word for it until we hear from town council with the scenic road. Okay, just some matters, administrative matters, the next meeting is gonna be June 16th, if that's all right with you. We're not gonna try to squeeze one in on the 6th where we have a town meeting on the 7th. Is that, anybody have a problem with that? Okay, so next one will be our organizational meeting, June 16th. Another thing that came up
Just
is
want to be clear, there's, I'm sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair, but, so there is no meeting next week, correct?
right, we'll meet June
Okay,
16th
thank you.
instead. So there'll be town meeting and then town election, and then right after that, we'll meet on the 16th, which is the third Thursday, I think, right? No, it couldn't be. Yeah, it is, cause the
Yeah.
first.
Yes, it is.
Right, so that's
Because
our regular,
the
kind
second,
of-
the 9th, and then the 16th.
right, so it's kind of a regular meeting of ours, right, it's just the second meeting of the month. Okay, so we just need to announce it so the public knows that and it's all determined. Okay, the C under 8 is, I got a note from the town treasurer that there was $6,000 left, which was funds set aside for the master plan, and this was done way back when, Christina was with us. It was, I think 4 from my recollection is, it was some kind of split between the select board town funds and our funds. And it was set aside for the master plan implementation chapter because we were told by MRPC we'd never get a grant for it, that's not done. But then we did get a grant for it, that covers it. So I thought they were looking for the money back, but I wrote to, so I wrote clarifying what it was from and saying, I think maybe we should reserve some of it, we still want to have a hearing, I would think. You don't wanna just make a master plan and put it on the shelf, you wanna spread the word around, right, what's in it. Anyway, and then I got a note from Ryan saying we should keep the whole thing for FY '23 and cover whatever master plan expenses there are and then return what's left. So that's just a point of information, so that's what we're gonna do. Places Associates invoices are next. We can take a quick vote to pay these. One is, let's see, the cell tower, the ready completeness hearing for the cell tower, which he'd given a quote for, and which actually the money has been collected from the Vortex applicant, but we need, I think, still to approve the invoice to get bill paid. It's for $1,296.25, and he talks about all the things he did going through the review process and attending the hearings and so on. So, wanna make a motion to approve, well, we can do, maybe approve them separately, alright, for a motion for that one then?
Yep, I motion that we approve invoice number 5602.01 for Places Associates for a total of $1,296.25.
I'll second it. Any discussion? You mute. I can't hear
Can I mute it?
There you
Sorry.
go, okay, so, and no further discussion, should we just vote? Go ahead. Francois.
Mhm. Steiger, aye.
Monroe, aye.
And lived all I. Next bill is for all of this work he's done on Streeter Road. Which is, I don't know where it's going, but it's truly invaluable to at least know where we are, right? So, and it's for $2,632.50. This, you may recall, we voted to set it aside from the rest of the CPA funds and have it paid for out of those funds, from the funds that were appropriated in FY16, which we're trying to spend down. So if you'd like to make a motion on that, we'll get that paid.
I motion that we approve invoice number 5560.06 for Places Associates in the amount of $2,632.50.
I'll second it. Any
I second
further-
the motion.
Okay, Francois. Any discussion? Hearing none, lived all eye.
Monroe, I.
Steiger, aye.
Okay, great.
Alright, I'm gone.
I skipped your time. Thanks, Bill. We'll be in touch.
Well, if you need me for anything else, but
We don't need you for anything
I
else.
don't think you do.
Thank you very much.
my pleasure.
I think, we had to break that ice and test the waters and learn what could be done, and
It was frosty.
it was frosty, yeah.
But that's only part of the town. You
Yeah.
know, there's a whole bunch of other people that might say, hey, you know, we have to look out for the greater good.
Well, I was hoping that, I mean, I know what it's like. I had protected land in the backyard once, and we had trails through it and so on. But I was hoping for more of a, you know, we're gonna get 25 acres protected out of this if we, you know, just allow 3
Yeah.
or 4 units, which
The-
is all we're really looking for, of affordable housing.
The thing that I hope is that if we don't get support for doing something like this, the same vigor shows up to the select board to prevent them from putting it to auction, because that needs to be the second prong of anything that happens here. Where if we don't get to do something with it, there needs to be the same vigor that shows up to try to get open space to get it instead, so.
But don't forget, you can split the baby.
That's,
Yeah.
seems like a reasonable request to me, but I don't live there, so it's
Okay.
important to hear what they have to
Yeah.
say. It may be worth testing the soil. You have any idea what that would cost? You can think about it and we'll talk.
Okay.
Okay. I wanna say, and this is for not just Chris and Francois, but for everybody out there. We are the Affordable Housing Committee, and we have, helped CPC, sponsor these CPC articles to help with the house on Ragged Hill Road. And there is an article on the town warrant for $25,000 from CPC money. And there was some discussion about whether we need that all. At the time, when we put it on, when in February, back when warrants were starting, we were in the deep COVID days, the committee didn't have any traction raising money. And I thought we would need it just to make the local share we agreed to raise, or help pay for it anyway. So what has happened with this is that the local committee, if I can find the exact, they've raised $29,000 of the $35,000. So they're pretty close to what we said we would raise, but the house is, and so the way these are, each house is independent. Habitat raises most of it, the town has a share of it through the donating land, and always CPC funds, always going to it. Sometimes the CPC funds pay the whole house, right? And then the local community. But each one is an independent project. You know, I know Melinda Gates gave $350 million to Habitat, but it didn't go to the local chapter. It went parceled out to really poor areas of the country where they really, so anyway. So the problem we have is we had a budget, it was like $170,000 we had to raise, cause all the laborers donated by the Volk School kids, it was materials, right? Well, there were material cost overruns with COVID of $13,000. Most of which, 11 plus of which was just lumber costs, you know, the framing. So the bottom line is, we do need the whole 25,000 to help with this project. We didn't quite meet our goal, and Habitat hasn't quite met its goal for this house either. They're having the same fundraising problems. But with the 25,000, we bring it to a gap that we can close. So I'm encouraging people to vote for it and to realize that we're covering not only what the local committee couldn't raise, but the cost overruns driven by the supply shortages and cost increases of trying to build anything this year. Okay, so there's my piece, support that article.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I have received some feedback from some constituents on that are resistant to funding past what we originally committed for, and that there might be some resistance on that at town meeting.
Well, there may be, but I think that I will have Carolyn come and speak. And I think generally in this town there's a resistance to affordable housing, generally. And what people don't understand about Habitat for Humanity is they're not a money-making machine. They just raise from grants, through federal programs, through a lot of grassroots efforts as well. And the town does turn in money every year through CPC money. So like these $25,000 we're spending, none of it's borrowed. And there's another $25,000 there if we need it. And we had $50,000 appropriated in 2016 that nobody did anything with, which is where we did the tax titles, right? So this is out of the CPC funds, there's a certain amount that's just set aside for affordable housing. It's all it can be spent for. And this is all coming out of that. We have quite a bit left over, and we got a big tranche coming in next year with a bigger than expected state match. And we don't have any plans. You see the resistance here towards starting something else. We can't do the gravel pit for senior housing, which I really wanted to do, because the groundwater is contaminated. So there's no reason why we shouldn't give this money to the only affordable housing project in 40 years in this town, you know, and help them out. Everybody that went through this year knows what the cost increase of trying to build anything was. So I hope you can talk to them. If not,
Isn't
you know,
there
we will.
a warrant item on approving the cleanup of the gravel pit?
I believe
There
Remediation.
is, no, it doesn't approve the cleanup. All it does is approve the testing to find out the extent of the contamination. $50,000, just to put those test wells in, to find the extension. And I think we're looking at, you know, we gotta dig out the contaminated, we've gotta, I don't think that project's ever gonna go, honestly, but maybe, you know, maybe, yeah.
To be in compliant, Mike Stahl, 5 Lombard Road, I was at that select board meeting, and they changed the wording to allow it for the warrant article to be both the testing and any amount of remediation that could be performed. I'm paraphrasing, but they specifically discussed that issue and covered it in the wording.
But the quote for the testing that we've had for 6 months or 8 months is $49,000.
Oh, okay, then that
500 and
something.
something.
Seems
So it
like
is,
it
I mean,
takes
unless
up.
they're gonna go out and get bids from other people and think they can beat that,
Oh.
I don't know, but that is the cost of just the testing. So I'm guessing if the testing is that much, I don't know, Bill says, Bill
There
Murray.
could be recommendations along, I hope it's just not test results.
No, they'll give recommendations, a cleanup plan,
Okay.
that is
And-
part of it,
and, okay,
yeah.
and that there could be something done, one of those recommendations, or several, whatever, could potentially be phased in and covered by whatever that warrant item, you know, cost was set aside for, or identified as.
There is also certainly a appetite for funding that with ARPA money, both at a town administrator level and on the committee.
Well, I think I hear the resistance, cause I've always had the resistance to affordable housing, but people really need to understand that we are nowhere near the mark in this town. There is no land in this town, and the Habitat House is the first project in 40 years that involved actually building anything, right? So if they wanna be, well, Habitat shouldn't have spent more money on the lumber to build this house, you know, that's their problem. Well, nobody could have built a house this year without running into those lumber problems. So I feel passionately about it. I'll speak to town hall floor about it. Carolyn's coming about it. The CPC is fine with that. They said, take the whole money, if you have some left over because you have a really successful fundraiser, you can refund it to us. Many of the other projects have refunded, you know, a little bit at the end, but I know they're gonna need it
There was also ARPA money approved for that too,
for,
for the shortfall.
Oh.
There was, the
It's-
$25,000 was already approved with ARPA money.
well, they still have a shortfall even after we pay for that, but I'm talking to Carolyn about how, it's getting closer, it's like 10,000 or something.
Yeah, so ultimately at the end, the select board's gonna get to be the ones who end up making the ultimate decision on what comes
Okay.
out of ARPA.
Okay, so if it
And-
fails on town hall floor, we
Yeah,
got a
if it-
second bite at the apple.
Yes,
Mhm.
it will be up
Alright,
for debate
alright.
at the select board because the ARPA committee did recommend it, and I can't remember if the select board recommended or if they tabled it until after the meeting. I don't remember what the outcome was on that, but
Well, nobody worked harder than that committee. You went to one of their a couple of their fundraisers, right? They did online, they did, and people were very generous. People just out of pocket made 1,000 donations, $5,000 in one case. You know, so there are people that actually really care about the affordable housing problems.
I thought you were
But-
talking about the ARPA committee for a moment. That committee also did a lot of work.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, to make this, it's a very, very, very difficult to do affordable housing, it turns out, even with a great partner like Habitat. Alright, so I also have, Ryan wrote to me and said they're actually taking seriously these updating the zoning bylaws, which is really welcome news. And the last thing I wanna do is on this list is, Francois, are you going to be in town for town meeting and are you gonna present the best bylaw? Mute. You're mute. Tell him we can't hear him. Francois, you're mute. Unmute. There we go.
Sorry, I unmuted, sorry. No, I'm back in Massachusetts, so I will actually be here. I will be participating in the town meeting, yes.
Do you wanna do the
I
presentation?
just couldn't make it to Hubbardston tonight.
Okay.
I'm in Boston.
Oh, okay.
I did also want to throw
you-
out that
Do best. You're gonna do the best presentation, about 2 minutes? Or you want me to do it? I'll do it. You're gonna do it. Okay.
No, I'll do it.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Okay. Sorry.
yeah. Oh, I did want to throw out that that actually both myself and my wife received questions on our old candidates' Facebook pages about the ADU and about BESS, and that there are apparently quite a few people out there that don't really understand what's going on with them. So we need to make sure we're very thorough with our explanation.
Okay, you hear that? You have to be clear, so not 2 minutes, you gotta. And you gotta begin at the beginning, Francois, cause people really don't understand, much as I've tried.
Yeah.
Begin to begin?
Begin at the begin, you know, that it's storing
Yeah.
energy from the solar systems and the off-peak, you know, they need to understand.
Yeah, and we've obviously
Right.
made
No,
efforts to answer those constituent questions,
Go
but
ahead.
we're gonna wanna answer them on the floor very thoroughly too.
Okay. And I'll help answer on the floor, but we need a presentation first that sets it out, don't you think? And I'm very clear, I can do that, the accessory dwelling quickly, and I understand why the warrants are, it's confusing, cause a lot of things crossed out from here, there, and the other place, so I would start by saying, we start with 3 different kinds of accessory dwelling, additions you can put on your house, we've consolidated them into one, and we've developed some guidelines as to the size they can be and the number of occupants and so forth. I think I can do that pretty efficiently.
Yeah, the comment sheet that you had from when we first talked about it, I think is the best summary that there, I don't know if you still have it somewhere, but
I'll dig
you,
it out.
you had
I'll-
a sheet of what your comments were when we first marked it up. Essentially just running down that
Yeah.
answers all of the questions.
That's the easy one, it's Francois that's got the hard one.
Yeah.
But,
I had a quick question. Are we in any way, shape, and form addressing the rate of growth?
you've frozen up. Say it again.
I think the question was if we were gonna address the rate of growth.
Oh, yes, I'm
Expecting something
supposed
be
to,
part of the
Francois,
fiscal
thank you, yes, I'm supposed to address that, and I will do that.
year. And
I'll do that. Why the AG threw it out, yeah, they wanted an explanation. So they threw out the 1-year extension last year, right? But they made it very clear that they weren't gonna allow us to essentially do the same thing updated. I can explain that, and you're right. I'll sit down.
Right, I'm back, I guess.
Yep, yep.
Can I hear it? Can you hear
Yep.
me?
Yep.
I'll do that, Francois, yes, Ryan said he did want somebody to talk about it, and I told him I'd do that.
Okay, thank you. I think it's just important because we didn't put anything up on our website, and I know that we had some concerns last year. Clearly, I think other people will be looking at this here. And quite frankly, I think it goes hand in hand with some of the things that are happening even with affordable housing, quite frankly.
Yeah. Did
The
you
whole,
see?
the whole mood that is happening in at the state level from government perspective is definitely going to impact not only rate of development but affordable housing down the road.
The headline in the Telegram and Gazette from Worcester today was that they're going to have an inclusionary zoning law, so every developer that wants to develop in Worcester has to include affordable units in their project. So that's,
We also
Yeah.
just barely escaped the requirements that are being put on towns that are MBTA adjoining, because we are one town removed, so we're just outside of it. But that would radically change what could happen in Hubbardston and what our zoning requirements would be.
wow. Well, all right. Any other public comments? You're my only member of the public left?
None.
All right.
You usually have great comments.
So, yeah, I know, we appreciate
Well, I
your
actually
comment.
have a question after, but it doesn't have to be part of the
Okay,
formal meeting.
okay. So a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I second the motion.
Not debatable, not discussable, lived all eye.
Monroe, aye.
Steiger, aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. See you on the 16th.
Can I take a
Thanks,
Thank you
picture
very
of
much.
that, the references for scenic roads that you
Oh.
mentioned, that you were looking for, you found it, and then I didn't have a pen quick enough to write it down, but you mentioned what the
Yeah, this is, you can. That's the dark, and here, take this paragraph above it.
that's what